Hello, my name is Barbara Yarde and today I'm going to show you how to make some fused silver earrings. So let's have a look at what we're going to make. These are fused earrings, and fusing is layering lots of metal on top of each other and heating it until the metal fuses and melts into your larger sheet of metal. You can get some really interesting shapes and patterns. Fused metal, and this is a patinated finish with slight burnishing on it. Today we're going to be making a pair of studs. Let's get making. I'm using sterling silver sheet and this is going to be 0.8 millimeters thick. I'm also using some scrap silver that I've got from my scrap pot. And I've just cut it up into random shapes, nothing special, different pieces of metal that I've collected. Both sets of metal I've given them a wash, washed them in washing up liquid, dried them, and I've not touched them again, so they're just nice and clean. First thing I'm doing now, I've got my silver sheet. I've placed it on my soldering block. I am using a borax dish and the cone. And what you need to do is cover your sheet of metal with borax. Make sure you cover the whole piece. I'm now also going to carefully pick up my pieces of metal, scrap metal that I'm going to use, and just place them randomly. And as I place each piece randomly, I'm going to also coat that back and front with flux as well. So you can put as little or as many pieces of scrap on as you like. And I'm covering each one. I'm not touching, if you notice, I'm not touching anything. I'm using my tweezers, I'm not using my fingers in any way. Just going to place random bits. And when you're doing things like fused metal, if you decide to make a circle, a triangle, a hexagon shape, don't cut the size of your metal out first. Use a slightly larger piece of metal, and then you can, you've got more flexibility and you can pick the best bit to get the nicest shape that you want. I'm going to add a few more little pieces to my sheet, just another 2 or 3 pieces more. That should be enough. So I'm going to cover these, make sure they're all covered. Now everything is covered. I'm just going to move everything about so everything's in the place that I want it to be and how I want it all to look. There we go. Next thing I need to do is get my torch. Turn the flame up, and what we're doing is just heating our sheet of metal And we're just waiting for everything to melt together. And I'm moving my torch around. Keeping my torch as hot as possible. This might take a while, especially if your torch is slightly smaller. If you've got a torch with a slightly larger flame, the process will be a bit quicker. To speed the process up, I've switched to a larger torch and I've also put a wire mesh underneath. I've now fused my piece, which I'm now going to cool. I'm now going to pickle this and take a look after it's cleaned. What I'm aiming for when I am fusing my metal is random fusing. So I want a few bits that are fused, a few bits that are raised, and I'll take a, when I've finished and I've cleaned this up, I'll take a look. If I feel, I might go back and start heating and fusing and melting the metal a bit more. And I may also use a hammer to get the effect and finish that I want. I've now pickled my sheet. And I quite like the look, but I think what I may do is use my hammer just to flatten everything a little bit more. If you've got a rolling mill, that would be really great, and you can just gently put your piece through the rolling mill to flatten it even more. But I'm going to use a hammer for the moment. Don't worry if some of your pieces fall off, that does happen. What I'm going to do, I didn't fuse it for long enough, so I'm just going to refuse it now. I'm much happier now with this fusion, so I'm now going to quench and pickle. I've now pickled my sheet, and I do like the way this looks now. Next, I want to scribe out my shape. When I'm scribing out my shape, I'll usually do that on the back, just because it's a nice flat surface. So I've remembered where each area is, and I'm now going to scribe my back. I'm going to do 2 circles. This is enough space to cut a circle out. So I'm going to scribe my first one, using my scribe. You can also use a Sharpie if you want to. So I've got my place there, and this is the section that will be cut out. Now I'm just going to use my saw frame and cut that out. I've lubricated my saw blade. Might be a bit tricky to saw with fused metal just because it's slightly thicker and it'll have lots of ridges on, so your saw blade might catch. But just take your time, stop, remember to lubricate your saw blade when necessary, and just keep going. So this is my shape, and I'm really pleased with the texture on that. Now I just need to get my either a half round file or my flat file, clean that up, file that around, then use my emery sticks to finish it up, and then I'm going to solder my earring backs on. I'm now just going to file up my circle. Making sure it's nice and round. It's a nice round circle. And I'm just going to finish it with my emery stick. This is quite a coarse emery stick. You can go from anything from 800 up to 1000 because you need it quite coarse. Again, I'm just going to take it around the edges to make it nice and smooth. I'm now happy I've cleaned this up, and next I'm going to solder on my earring back. I'm now going to apply the flux. As this is quite a large earring, I'm not putting my earring back in the centre. I'm just going to put it about a third of the way down, just near the top there. I've got my third arm. I'm just going to position my earring back using my third arm into the spot that I want. Now I'm using a tiny pillion of easy solder, and I will now heat my piece again to solder my earring back onto my earring. I'm making sure I heat the largest surface area first because my earring back is very tiny and I shouldn't have to heat that at all. Now I've soldered my earring back onto my earring. I'm going to quench this and pop it back in the pickle. Once this comes out of the pickle, I will clean it up and show you how to oxidize it. I've now cleaned up my earring. It's been pickled and cleaned. I've given it a little wash in with some washing up liquid after I've pickled it. I've cleaned the back of my earring as well. Now I'm going to patinate it. And that is using a black oxidizing solution. This is the one I'm using today, but there are lots of different ones available. Now I'm going to patinate my piece. This is a very toxic liquid and you should avoid contact with your skin. Rubber gloves are always good, and if you get any on your skin, rinse it right away. I'm going to leave this just to settle into the metal for a while. The longer you leave it, the darker your metal will become. And then in a moment, I will rinse it off. Now I'm going to rinse it using cold water. I'm now rinsing my oxidized piece. Just going to dry it off, avoiding contact with my hands. That is giving a beautiful colour. It's really nice. The oxidizing liquid has gone onto the sides and the back, and I don't really want it on the sides or the back. So what I'm going to do is, using some wire wool, just remove the edge, those edges, to give it a nice clean finish. I'm now just going to clean up the areas that I want to remove my oxidization. I just want it on the top. I don't want anything on the edge or anything on the back. I'm using wire wool. It comes in different coarsenesses. And this is a medium coarse wire wool. So I'm just rubbing it along the edges. That will remove all of the oxidization along my edge. My edges are now clean and it's just the top that is oxidized. I'm going to use my wire wool on the back of my piece and clean that up now. And even I got some on my earring back, so I'm going to use that just to clean it. I have now cleaned my sides and my back. What I'm going to do is just use my emery stick around the edges to give it a final finish. Just make sure I keep it nice and neat. And what I want to do now is bring out just a bit more of the metal, and I'm going to use my burnisher to do that. I'm going to pick out areas, raised areas, and just rub them back with the curved part of my burnisher. And that are my fused earrings. This brings us to the end of our project. As you can see, you can get a lot of different textures from the way you fuse your metal, and a lot of different finishes from the oxidization, depending on what type of oxidization you use. I hope you enjoyed this. Please do share your finished pieces in our Facebook group, and I will see you on another video.